All my little ones. This little one's still open. This is the highest level workshop that I'll be giving throughout the series. You guys know that this. Yes, ma'am.
May I have your name first?
Hafide Hanzu todas Professor Jerrold Castro, Sujus Masi para Hanzu, for coming over here and taking this workshop. My name is Jerrold. Thank you all.
Please give him a round of applause. Thank you.
All right, so I just wanted to say, come inside. Okay, we just like literally just started talking.
All right.
So this is the highest level workshop I'm giving. For this particular series of workshops I've been doing. This is the third workshop. The first two were for kids. So welcome. You are not kids. You are not kids. This is a workshop I wanted to give. This is the one I really wanted to give. This is the one about this is for artists, because I absolutely love creating and painting really. And so having me talk to seasoned artists like yourselves allows me to take it a step, notch it up a little bit, and really talk about the things that I wanted to talk about. Next week, if you guys have any veteran friends, service members, families, I'll be giving another workshop, hopefully here, on Saturday.
Next week,
Next week.
Sundays are meetings.
What's that? Veterans,
Oh,
service
veterans.
members.
I see.
Yeah, I already have, I have my contacts
Nice.
that are starting to fill the slots, but no one's actually filled it yet. They're just putting the word out. So hopefully we'll be here again next week.
There's a class on Saturday next week.
Yeah, for color.
Yeah, and then we'll have a meeting on the 18th.
Yeah, so I'm gonna get another space somewhere.
Okay.
Hopefully. Otherwise, we'll be out on the sidewalk. Really, the whole point of the workshops is to really show the work, right? And for you all who are artists, are probably more interested in the technical aspects of the work, right? You're not really. The work is nice. It's nice to look at, but everybody likes to look at paintings for the most part. But this one, I wanted to talk about the technical aspects and really dive into the creative process. Not only the creative process, but the painting process, and how I went about to create the look that I went after. Right? Because if you all know, I'm a very technical artist, meaning I go very representational, and I can paint as realistic as I want to. Right? A lot of training went into that, and I'm trying to move away from representational, but not go fully abstract. Right? So that's why I got work like this. Right? It's kind of like it's representational but abstracted, right? So come on in, so you can see the work. All right. So the idea is like, how do I, from an artist mindset, right? Like what are the things that you should think about when you're moving from a representational technique, more representation technique, to something that kind of deviates from reality a little bit. If you look at my bio, I call myself a contemporary realist. What does that mean? Anybody take a stab at what contemporary realist means? Come on, anybody? Come on.
Try to be real, but yet conform to the contemporary styles.
Okay, that's a good definition. Anybody else? What about the word realist? Everybody understand realism? What realism is?
Like classically?
Classical, right? Mm-hmm. In your mind, the realism movement happened probably somewhere around the 1800s, right? And
15th century and 16th century?
No, even further, like closer to our time. Mm-hmm. So if you think of, I don't want to throw. This is not going to be a lecture, all right? So. But the realism movement is really, the idea about realism is to depict the world around them in a honest way, right? That's realism. But then I attach myself to that. I want to depict the world around me the way that I see it. But then I stick in the word contemporary in front of that, right? And that, I think, notches it up a little bit. It gives me a little more play on what I want to depict. So I'm not just painting people sitting down on a beach, fishing or whatever, right? Like whatever you want to see, right? Like the real world that you see. I don't want to just take a photograph and paint a photograph. I want to give myself leeway to do certain things to make that look better or nicer, or at least visually in my head, the vision that I want to put down on canvas. So I play with those two words a lot. So if you look at Nathemalic, right? Nathemalic is very much taken from the Old Masters, right? It looks like an Old Master painting. You can touch it. Yeah, I'll invite you up. Come on over. Touch it. Touch this. Hands on it. Go ahead. Touch it. Don't let the side.
Yeah, so there's no gaps too, right?
Green.
Yeah, I didn't do this in Gas. This one was on my solo show. Yeah, but you feel it. It's very smooth.
It's smooth, right?
The way that you apply this using the old techniques, the old master techniques, is glazes.
Right. Yeah.
Like, so you're blending more than anything. You can actually see all the way through to even little lines in there that were probably for my sketch lines because they're glazing on top of it all the way to the top, so you can see all the way through. It makes the painting look luminous.
Oh, wow.
All right, so that's it, right? That's how you do it. The more paint you put, more layers on there, it just starts to get a little more thicker, but then and more tighter. In some areas are very, very thin, so this like almost close to underpainting down here. So you get that's a classical way to paint. That's the way I was trained to be a classical painter. And then you shift over to something like this, which got a little bit more texture on it, right? You can still see the smooth transitions in the skies in the back, but then you got a little more texture. You start leaving looser marks on here, and tighten up areas where you want to tighten up. All right. So now you understand that classical way to paint is different than the contemporary way of painting, right? And what's that?
What's the difference of Impressionism and contemporary?
Yeah, I think Impressionism is part of the contemporary movement.
Okay.
So when you think about it, right, where does contemporary start and where does it end? There is no end in contemporary, right? Where it starts is probably Impressionism, or it's like right at the cusp, right before Post-Impressionism. You're looking at Monet, and then you're looking at some of the other Impressionists like Johnson or Sargent, right? So these guys are just doing Impressionism. Just a single brushstroke tells the story or describes the form or whatever it is it's trying to depict. So that's where I think contemporary. So it allows me to go all the way back to the Impressionist movement and say, and that's remember that's before realism. Impressionism is before realism. In fact, realism is a response to Impressionism. Okay, so we're looking at our history. All right, so it allows me to go all the way back to Impressionists and apply Impressionistic techniques, and then to make up stuff on my own. Like people are doing things now. I mean, you could do drip painting. I'll do a drip painting if I need to. If that's what the painting is calling me to do, right?
Like a Jackson Pollock?
Like a Pollock, yeah. I can do if that's what is required for me to achieve the vision I'm going after in that particular painting. I'll use that technique because it's part of the contemporary space.
Why not?
Right? Why not?
Why not?
Right? So, but you hardly ever see me do something like that. But I will if I need to. All right. So kind of give you the range, right? Like what is classical, what is contemporary. There's a separation between the two, but they're all a response to each other. So the old masters, up to now, I'll still use that if it's required, because the old masters are a foundation of how I paint, how I approach painting. So let's go and let me ask you real quick, because this whole workshop is really about expressiveness, right? Expressive mark making. What does that mean to you? I think I asked that question, right? Visualize in your head what you think an expressive painting is, and then you guys tell me what that is to you. Anybody want to start first?
Like your painting, when you first enter at the top, you've got, it's like,
Let's walk over
So,
there.
yeah.
No, keep on talking, keep talking.
right, so it's like you have the subject, but you also could look at it as, it almost is getting abstract, and you're really seeing the like, thickness of the paint on here.
So she said a couple of things, right? She threw out some terms that we probably should make sure we understand, abstract. And she said thickness, which to me talks about texture, right? It's an element of art. Texture is an element of art. It's one of in the list. Anybody else? What is expressive painting to you?
I think it goes beyond the visual, where you see a photo,
Yeah.
but the expressive shows something, emotions or something more powerful.
Okay.
So
it feeds off of an emotional aspect, an emotional piece that's tied to the work, right?
Yes.
Is that process driven, or what? Is that something that artist is doing to the painting, or something that you're receiving as a viewer? What do you think?
I think it goes both ways.
Both ways?
Yeah,
Okay.
because
So it communicates, right?
Yes.
There's a communication of emotion between you and the piece,
Yeah.
and the artist and the piece. Okay. Anybody else? Come on.
I think of you like, expressing your own style or
Okay.
thoughts.
So, and how do you do that? How would you express your own style? When you look at a painting and you say that artist expressed their own style, what does that mean to you?
Like your brand or signature.
Like their look, right? Their look. How do they do that? What do they think about it? If you don't have an answer, that's okay. That's okay if you don't have an answer.
There's so many different genres. Like there is landscape
Mm-hmm.
or portrait,
Mm-hmm.
or there's many urban this, all those so many genres, but you're gonna choose from there one specifically
Mm-hmm.
and get it and
Okay.
digest it.
Okay.
And then from there you express from your own technique and skill
Okay.
to express on your canvas.
Yeah, you guys are all saying the same things, all right? I have a specific definition, but I want to hear your guys' own real quick. So that's good. So there's a specific genre, and then how that genre is portrayed is really personal to the artist, and they pick out that one thing and they try to like focus in on that
You
one
cannot
thing to make sure.
express everything
Yeah.
in one time.
Yeah.
You have to choose one.
Perfect. Yeah, I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah. You have something?
No, I
Oh,
don't.
come on. What you got? No, you don't have it. Okay, I have a specific definition. Let me pull it up.
Okay.
Because this is what it, so for actually first, let me tell you, because I did Google search.
But anyway, what was the question first?
Okay, what is
What was your
expressive painting? What is that to you? What is expressive painting? What does that mean when you like say expressive painting? Close your eyes, visualize what it is, think about what that is, and then communicate. Tell me what that expressive painting really means. So here is a Google search. It's coming from Angela Cameron, and what she says, what expressiveness means in art is exploring shape, pattern, color in an abstracted way. And then it talks about, she says stuff about artistic style. The artistic style captures the viewer with emotion and intrigue, so it kind of peaks, like something comes out of it. But she also says there is no defined subject matter. It doesn't have to have a defined subject matter, but instead there's an intuitiveness to the color and the patterns that emerge. Right? So that's a good definition. I have my own definition of what it is. So let me pull up my own definition. Because this is kind of to the crux of I want you to understand what I'm trying to do from a technical aspect about the work that I've created. My definition is maximizing the degree of one or more visual elements in order to create a mood or feeling while maintaining a sense of unity and balance throughout the composition. It's a very technical way to say it. It's almost textbook way. You can pull that off of a textbook and say that.
Can
But
you
that's the
send
way.
it to us later?
Yeah, I totally will.
Like value, like you're maximizing the value.
That's where you get it, right? So that's why I gave you the list of all those elements and principles, right? The elements of art are one thing, the principles of design are another thing, right? Elements of art are all the pieces that make up the work, the little pieces. right? Line, shape, color, value, all that, right? And then the principles of designer. What are all those little pieces doing? What are they doing to create this mood, this feeling, this?
Communicate with the
It
crowd.
communicates, right? So it could be a sense of balance, it could be a sense of contrast, it could be a sense of there's a pattern, there's a rhythm, there's a movement, right? Like movement's actually the element, right? But that's the effect that you get. So it's the principle designs are the effect that the elements are doing, right? So that's my professor part, right? Like that's me telling you, giving you the lecture, okay? But I want you to look at all the paintings, right? And see that I'm playing with a balance of texture, right? As an example, texture. You will see smooth transitions next to very hard, very deliberate brush strokes on here, right? Or it could be palette knife. Very, very deliberate that plays up that contrast between the soft texture versus the hard texture, right?
I noticed that it's mostly on the light, like you using texture on the light.
So that goes back to the classical way of painting, because the way that you approach opaque painting like this, where you're doing acrylics and oils, is you go from dark to light. So your dark colors go, or your dark values go first, and then your lighter values come up after they're the last ones. And you'll see that the lighter ones are thick. But then I do have some thick dark ones here too.
Oh, okay.
Right? They're subtle there. Like as an example here. This is a great example. Black on black painting. Black background, black thick marks on here. It's subtle, but I'm still playing with texture, right? I'm still trying to make the paint communicate a very direct mark. And the way that I do that is I take thick paint and I put it on there and I don't fuss with it. I leave it on there and I think about it, right? It's like it's not a it's not some. I thought about it in the beginning of the painting. I visualized what I want to do. I was like, this has to be a black on black painting on this part, because that's dark shadow in my head. Like in the beginning, when I did my underpainting, my final thought was, I'm not going to put the white marks on there last. I'm gonna put the black marks on there last.
Yeah, I think I can see that, because with the blacks, you know, sometimes when you look at any picture or whatever, you still see some kind of shadow.
Yeah.
And those things make it have a shadow.
Yeah.
Outside of the painting.
Yeah. So it's kind of like when you're looking. If you look at, as an example, you look at maybe a golf ball, right? A golf ball is a good one. It's got all these little dimples in there. There's the ball itself has its own shadow, but the texture of the ball also contains little tiny shadows. And how do you communicate that? In the classical way of painting, you would do all those little shadows first. And then on the light side of those little dimples, you would take a thick white or whatever and put it on there as well, right? And it would be thicker than the dark. I, as a contemporary artist, gave myself permission to throw that out the window and make my darker marks thicker than my lighter marks. Changes it up, right? It's more expressive now in a way, because I was very deliberate, right? And I did it in a contemporary way where I didn't follow the old rules. And then it's thicker and it's more gestural. And it communicates something, right? It communicates in a way you don't even notice it at first, but then when you come up to it, you're like, why is that shinier than the other one? So I'm also playing with matte and shiny as well too. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And even inside the greens and stuff like that, you'll see. So I invite everybody, right, to go and touch the paintings. Don't worry about it. Paintings to me, I mean, I'm giving you permission, right? Go ahead and touch the paintings, even if it's hot. Go ahead and touch it, right? And feel those textures on there, and like try to figure out what it is I'm doing. There's another aspect of for the technical pieces, and I credit this to Ha'ani. She taught me this terminology. Don't lick the painting. You can touch it, just don't lick it. All right. Now let me tell you what that means. Don't lick the painting. It's part of the painting process. a lot of artists will go in and out. Just stay like that, just keep going like that, right? Don't do that. Mix your paint, put it on and leave it. If it doesn't stay at the end of the painting, you can correct that, right? You can correct that on it. It might not be right later, but be deliberate on the mark that you make and keep it there as long as possible. If you have to paint over it, paint over it. But don't go like this, okay? Now there's a difference, right? You'll see me scumble. I'll scumble. Usually in the beginning of the process when I'm trying to mass in my values, I'll scumble. I'll scumble to try to get everything in the right value, and then later on, when it's like when I'm really painting, then I'm mixing. You'll see me mix more mixing than I am painting. I'll mix so I get the right color, the right temperature, the right value. Put it, and then when I feel like it's correct, then I'll put it on and I'll leave it. Like, be very deliberate. Put it on, leave it. All right. So that's another thing that, as a tip, I want to make sure you understand. I wrote down a bunch of tips. Let me read all the tips. Now, this is the way I wanted to have this talk. Okay. The first aspect that I always think about is how do I simplify everything? Because a lot of times, us artists, we tend to try to paint everything we see. There's nothing wrong with that. Some really awesome, great work where you paint everything that you see. But there are a lot of things that are more important than other things, okay? And a great way to do it is to simplify the things that are most important. Everything else becomes, the minutia becomes part of one thing, the one most important thing. I like to squint my eyes. It's a very old trick to do is you squint your eyes and then you can see the most, you can do that on any of these paintings, squint it and you can see the most important aspects of the painting. And it usually talks about the values, right? And the values tend to be, light, middle value, and then your darkest value. You tend to get to that point. You can even squint to the point where you just get a dark and a light, right? You can go to that extreme and it becomes very, very graphic. That in itself is very, very expressive too, right? The second thing that I always talk about is, it's kind of like related to simplifying, is economy. Like the economy of your brush strokes, the economy of your colors, the economy of organizing your values. So be prepared, like prepare yourself for it. So all you got to do is simplify. As you simplify yourself, you just put the paint down. So in other words, you can use, as an example, a limited palette. You don't have to have the full range of all your colors. You don't have to lay it all down there. I hardly ever work in a full palette. A lot of times I work very, very much in a very simplified palette. I get the most important colors and I use that. That's it. I usually mix my own blacks, right? So that automatically is a blue and an umber. So I'll have that on there and I mix my own black and then set that to the side. And then whatever, if I have a green, I throw a green there. I usually have a white, right? So this painting is probably only 4 colors. Blue, yellow, burnt sienna, burnt umber, okay, and white. If white is a color. Is it a color? So 5 colors, right? So and then and it's all mixed all like that. So you can adjust, and then just this one painting, just that, right? So let's go to another side over here. All right. Oh, this one here. Actually, let's go to this one. The thing besides simplifying is focus. Different than focal point. So focus is when you pick just one element and then you kind of like see how many variations you can get out of that one element, right? So for instance, like texture is a great example. Okay, how far can you push this idea of texture, right? So, or even go even more simplified, line. How many lines can you get? You get a straight line, you get a wavy line, you get a vertical line, you get a horizontal line, you get a jagged line, all of that communicates something, right? But there are all those different variations. So you can just say, okay, this work is all about line, and you just get how many variations of line. Example, Jackson Pollock, right? With his drip paintings, spinning it all around and everything, and how much movement you can get with just that single line that he puts on there, right? Same thing like that, how much line can you put on there? But this one I think is more about texture. For me, it's about texture. All right, so do I get the bumpiness? How it's the strokes, goes thick ridge to a very soft transition out. Different things. This one here, this texture, how many little scrapes that I can get out of there without really interfering with the bottom. So texture is another good example. When you focus on one of those elements, it could be value, right? Like how can you push those value ranges? How many values can you go? How many? And if you throw value with the focus was simplified, you can go with the light and the dark, and you only get 2 values. Well, what if you get you just limit yourself to just 5 values? How realistic can you get? How simplified can you get? Then here's another tip that I want to say is fast does not always mean loose. Fast does not mean loose. Anybody familiar with Anne Gale? Anne Gale? You can Google search her. She's cool. She was my art professor in my undergrad. She's amazing, amazing. And her painting is very loose. A-N-N and then G-A-L-E. So first name and last name. And Anne was amazing because she painted these very loose figurative works, very academic in a way. It's always a sitter sitting down, kind of like you do a light painting. But then she would make these marks, and it's very slow and methodical. She would mix, step up, make the mark, step back, look, one mark. So it takes her a long time to mix, the mark, step back. Very, very slow way of painting. And very methodical, very deliberate, but very loose. Okay, so I give you her as an example that a lot of times when you think of this painting, it looks so loose, and then you think of Jackson Pollock going crazy or somebody going crazy, just squiggling around, moving as fast as they can, and look how loose it looks. It doesn't necessarily make it away. And the way I paint, I'm a slow painter. Now, I can paint fast if I need to. I did I think 6 of these paintings in 3 days. Oh. I can paint as fast as I could, and there were the big one. One of them was that one, the big one, the biggest one. I did that in I was doing little paintings in between that time while I was doing that big one. All right, so you can paint fast and loose, but it's probably better to be more deliberate about the work or find that balance between for speed painting. You don't want to paint too fast because you can mess up. All right, so be deliberate with your strokes. Be deliberate with your mixing, your color, and everything like that. If it's wrong, you make one mark on there. It's wrong. It's part of the painting now. It's part of the painting. Mix it, make it right, and then put it right next to it. See what kind of painting effect you're going to get with that. I find painting is a series of bad marks that just kind of all look good together. It kind of ends up like that, right? You're never satisfied until that last stroke, and it works. It's done, right? Okay, so yeah. Fast is not always equal loose. And then what I always do, this is another tip, is you should always strive for balance with variety. Okay? So what does that mean? So you think about a unified painting. You can think of a painting that is all red. A red painting, right? It's unified in a way. It's unified. It's very, very much in the red style, okay? But it's a variety of marks that make this interesting, to me at least. It makes it interesting. Anyways, so I do have black on here. I have to have that punctured color, punctured value. But the mark making on here it screams variety, right? They're all not the same marks, okay? We have marks that are kind of like fuzzy, right? Almost like a cloud. And then you have marks that are very much, it's actually this way, deliberate, very much deliberate. And I can use a palette knife, I can use a brush, I can use my hands, whatever it needs the painting's calling me to do. But a variety of marks is good, but don't want it too much of a variety that you lose the cohesiveness of the work. All right, so how do I balance the variety of these marks? I keep it in one color range, like a family of color, one family of color. That makes me achieve a sense of balance. That makes sense? Okay? All right. And then, okay.
How many colors did you use? 2 or?
No, I use yellow, I use cadmium red, and that's how I achieve the orange. I mix those and make the orange. And then I made my own black. I always make my own black. I never ever take black from the tube. And I think that every artist should try to do that as an exercise, or almost like a principle. I do it as a principle. Never ever use black from the tube. So throw out the black, you know? The black paint goes into the trash.
Why you have to do?
Because I think that black doesn't exist in nature. As what you think of as a black color is a combination of other colors that make it look that dark value. It's the darkest value of that particular color. So the way I do it is I use my blue and my brown. And brown, what is brown? Brown is a mixture of all other colors in the world, right? It's just, that's all it is. I get my darkest brown, my darkest blue, and I mix it. And then I can adjust the value of that. I can adjust the temperature, and in some sense the chroma of the black, because I can make that black look bluer. I can make it look redder. I add a little bit of alizarin crimson into it, and it makes it warmer. So I can adjust all those different things in the black, and I get a variety of black. So it's not just one straight from the tube. And if you have to, let's say, all right, yeah, you just can't live with your black paint, right? Why do they put it in the set if you're not, you know? So what I always do is I mix, if I had to, like I ran out of brown or something, I would mix another color into the black, just to kind of like change it a little bit, so it's not straight from the tube. Okay. Now some paintings will call for a straight. Hey, I need this thing as manufactured as possible. It's gonna be leather black like your shoes, right? It's gonna be black. Maybe that's what you're gonna do. That's okay. But I always try to mix my own. Because I'll never mix it the same. And that creates a sense of variety. Okay? Alright, and then I already told you don't blend. Put a mark down and leave it, right?
You told me that.
Now there's a chance that you're going to have to blend, right? You're going to have to make these soft transitions. You have to make the soft transitions, right? You're going to have to blend, but don't do it as often as a habit, right? You don't automatically go to blending. As a matter of fact, I think that the best way to create that transition of values is to do a series of small little marks, right? But that's the classical way to do it. That's like Rembrandt, how he transitions from his values on his self-portraits. He does a bunch of little marks, a lot of X's, and they're all like different ways, right? And it all creates this smooth transition. When you look at it far away, you get close to it, you're like, oh, there are tiny little sculpted marks of paint in there, right? Now, I say that, right? I say that, don't blend, because I want you to be okay with putting your mark down, and then, okay, I need a lighter mark. Put another light mark, like, oh no, I need something in between. Okay, mix the color, mix the red value, put it in between. So now you have this step transition, okay? So you don't have to blend it. Don't be susceptible to always blending. And that goes to don't lick the painting, which I give to Anna. She's the one that taught me that. Don't lick the painting, all right? All right, focus. Okay, we talked about focus,
Yes.
but inside the terminology, there's this word called focal point, right? The most important thing in the painting.
Like the subject.
Not the subject, that's more of an emphasis. That's also in
Like the
there.
main.
It's the one thing that you want everything else to revolve around.
Okay.
Focus in on that. That's where most of your work should happen. Everything else can be loose. Everything else can be undescribed or under-described. Okay? So that makes your painting look a little bit more expressive because now you have a balance between something that is more focused in and then everything else around it is all loose. Right? Okay. And then the last thing I will say is trust your instincts. You're the painter. No one should tell you how to paint or what to paint, right? If you're gonna want a more expressive painting, then yeah, you can hear someone say you should do this, you should do this, you can ask for advice, no problem. But trust your instincts. What's your gut telling you to do? And then do that because it's your painting. It's no one else's painting. No one's gonna put their name right next to yours, right? It's gonna be your name on it. So trust your instincts. Let it be you that speaks. Okay? All right. Now, so that's kind of like the lecture a little bit. Now let's talk about my process and what I thought, how I approached the entire body of work. I don't know if you guys heard me talk about this. If you were here early in my opening, I talked about this process. It's a 3-step process: construct, deconstruct, reconstruct. Okay. Whenever, and that's 3 steps I always do in every one of these paintings. Construct is my drawing my experience on my classical training, where I construct a painting in a very classical way. Every one of these have classical influences in there. The way that I compose, right, where I get a gesture and I set it up the way I want it to. I want the head over here in the thirds. I want the flipper to come down over here, but I don't want it to touch the corner. I want it to kind of come back up so the eye travels back up. You know that there's a construction aspect there. Where are the values, the correct values, right? I want the light come from this direction. I want the shadows from over here. I'll put the shadow shape in. I'll mass it in. I do all that stuff. I do all of it. Plane changes and everything like that. I'll construct it in a very, very classical way. Then I deconstruct it. That's where the fun part starts to happen. Because I go back to kind of like second to the last point is focus in on the focal point. So I preserve the focal point. I figured out already where my focal point is, and I fuzzy everything else up around it. I whatever, all that work I put into it, I figured out where my focal point is, and then I just destroy things, deconstruct things, pull things off, move things around. Right? And you can see I move these fins around so often. Boom, boom, boom. Move these fins around. So this was actually constructed this way, and I was like, again, I'm gonna take off a little bit, I'm gonna move this pin over here, and then I'm gonna take the light and pull it down this way, and I'm gonna take the outside pin in here. I start taking pieces off of the painting, and I put other things in. I reduplicate, I skew, I make all these different changes to everything that I constructed, and that's what I call deconstruct. Okay? I reconstruct with some of the more striking visual aspects that I want to emphasize on the painting, like texture or a particular mark, a particular line that comes around here. I want to make sure I re-emphasize that, those parts. So that's the construct, deconstruct, reconstruct. And what that allows me to do, it gives me that contemporary look. It gives me the idea to play around with the paint to make sure that it's not going to be too much like a classical master painting, which can be, it's good, very good, right? Very nice, technical, awesome. You can appreciate that, but it's not the look that I'm trying to go for. I'm trying to be a little bit more loose, but I'm susceptible to paint like a master. So I know my tendencies, and I get myself out of the comfort zone by applying that particular process to the painting. Make sense? Cool? Okay. And then just a little further appreciation to the process. How did I come up with that process? Why construct, deconstruct, reconstruct? Okay, so this is where you as artists, I'm trying to have you step up your game, all right? Because it's about your process. That's my process, right? Construct, deconstruct, reconstruct. I was inspired by that with all the work I've done before, my other 2 previous bodies of work. You all know I paint, a lot of my subject matter has to do with the Tumon culture, right? That's kind of my brand. It's kind of what I do, all right? I want to celebrate the Tumon culture and I show that in my work. But knowing the Tumon culture, how it was constructed for thousands of years, and through colonization, it was deconstructed. And now with this Tumon Renaissance that you see happening, it's being reconstructed. So I apply that thought process to my visual process. You can do the same thing. What inspires you in the world? What makes you the artist that you are? Use that, and apply it to the work, because the work is your voice that cannot be spoken in any other way. It cannot be spoken through words. It has to be spoken through the visual, okay? That's what makes it expressive.
Yay!